Captain Ilara stood on the bridge of the Star Voyager, staring out into the deep expanse of space. Her mission was clear: explore new worlds, find new resources, and report back. But as the ship neared the distant planet of Canera, something felt different. There was a faint signal, a distress call, one that seemed ancient, almost forgotten. The Canary, as they were known, had been long abandoned by every other galactic civilization. No one had shown interest in their planet for centuries. Yet here was this faint signal calling out for help. The planet was isolated, far from the busy routes of galactic trade and diplomacy. The Canary had once been a proud and powerful race, but that was before their civilization fell into ruin. Now, their world was a shadow of its former self, its cities in disrepair, its fields barren. The Canary lived in small, scattered communities, far from the cities that once hummed with the energy of a thriving culture. And from what Ilara knew, no one cared. "Captain, we've arrived at the coordinates," said Lieutenant Rylor, a tall, calm officer at the controls. "We've scanned the planet's surface, but there's no sign of major cities, just a few small settlements." Ilara nodded. "We'll land. Something about this feels important. We need to investigate." The Star Voyager descended slowly toward the surface, cutting through the atmosphere with precision. As they landed in a large open clearing, the crew began preparing for their first encounter with the Canary. The team was small, only a few dozen humans, well trained in diplomacy, science, and combat. But Ilara knew the gravity of this mission was unlike any they had faced before. They were not just exploring a new world. They were answering a cry for help, even if the Canary were not sure they wanted help. Ilara and her crew disembarked from the ship, stepping into a world that seemed to be stuck in time. The air was thick with dust, and the faint hum of the ship's engines echoed into the silence. A few figures approached from the distant ruins of a nearby town. They were tall, with long silver hair, and their skin shimmered faintly in the light, almost like they were made of glass. Their eyes, though, were dull and tired. They looked as though they had seen too much loss. One of the figures, a woman who appeared to be the leader, stepped forward. Her eyes locked with Ilara's, and for a moment there was a silent understanding between them. The Canary leader spoke in a language that Ilara couldn't understand, but she had been briefed on the translation devices they carried. Within moments, the words were made clear. "You are human," the Canary leader said, her voice weak but steady. "Why are you here?" "We've come to help," Ilara replied, offering a small smile, trying to show kindness. "We found your signal. What's happened to your people?" The Canary leader hesitated, glancing back at the few others who had gathered around. They wore the same defeated expression. "We were abandoned," she said finally. "Once, we were a proud civilization, powerful and respected. But we became expendable. The other races left us. Now we are nothing." The words hit Ilara harder than she had expected. The Canary had been forgotten, left to survive alone on their dying planet. Ilara felt a surge of anger at the injustice, but she kept her face calm. It wasn't her job to judge the past. It was her job to help, now. "We will not leave you," Ilara said, her voice firm. "We will help you rebuild. We'll find out what happened to your people, and we'll make sure you're not forgotten." The Canary leader studied her for a long moment before nodding. "You are the first to say such words in many cycles." The crew got to work, setting up basic camp and scanning the surrounding area. As they did, Ilara continued to speak with the Canary leader. The woman's name was Tashra, and she explained that the Canary had been isolated for generations. The galaxy had moved on, and the Canary had been left to decay. Their technology was outdated, their resources depleted. The once great cities were now ruins, and the survivors had retreated into the wilderness. Ilara's heart ached for them. She had seen the effects of neglect and abandonment in other parts of the galaxy, but this was different. The Canary weren't just another race in the endless tide of intergalactic politics. They were people. People who had been betrayed. How many of you are left? Ilara asked quietly. Few. Tashra replied, her voice filled with sorrow. Only a fraction remain. And we do not know how much longer we can survive like this. Ilara turned to her crew, her mind racing. They had to act fast. They couldn't just leave these people to suffer. They were going to need supplies, technology, and most importantly, they needed hope. We'll start by helping you rebuild, Ilara said, determination rising in her voice. We have the resources to help you. We'll contact our command and bring more aid. Together, we'll make sure your people don't fade into history. The canera leader nodded, and for the first time in a long while, a glimmer of hope shone in her eyes. The humans had arrived. Maybe, just maybe, they weren't as alone as they thought. As the sun began to set over the barren landscape, Captain Ilara stood tall. She knew the road ahead would be difficult. But one thing was certain. The canera would not be forgotten again. Not on her watch. Captain Ilara stood in front of a large crumbling structure, the remnants of what had once been a grand canera city hall. The tall, silver towers had long since fallen, their shining surfaces tarnished by the ravages of time. The city felt empty, as if the ghosts of its past lingered in the air. She could sense it. This was a place that had once held so much hope and power, but now it was nothing more than ruins. Tashra, the canera leader, had guided them to this place, and as they walked through the shattered halls, she spoke quietly. This was the heart of our civilization, she said, her voice filled with a mix of sadness and resignation. We were once proud, powerful, respected by the galaxy. The humans, gathered around her, listened intently. The canera had been a race of great technological achievement, with cities that had reached the skies and fleets that had traveled across the stars. Now those cities were nothing more than hollow shells. Their fleets had long since been destroyed, and their people scattered, abandoned to fend for themselves. We trusted too easily, Tashra continued, her voice growing quieter. The other civilizations promised us protection, but when the war came, they turned away. They left us to fight alone. Ilara felt a deep ache in her chest. The canera had not just been abandoned. They had been betrayed. Their allies, the very civilizations they had trusted, had chosen to ignore their cries for help when the canera were most vulnerable. The galaxy had moved on, leaving them to fall. But Ilara's mind couldn't dwell on that. They needed to move forward, not linger in the pain of the past. She turned to her crew, signaling for them to begin exploring the city's remains. There had to be something here, some way to help the canera rebuild. The humans set to work, carefully scanning the area. Lieutenant Ryler and his team examined the remains of the canera's advanced technology, while Dr. Kayla, the ship's chief scientist, began to study the city's structure. Ilara, however, kept her attention on Tashra. She could see the weight of history on the canera leader's shoulders, and she knew it was up to the humans to offer something more than just supplies. They needed to give the canera a future. As they worked, Ilara asked Tashra more about the history of the canera. Tashra hesitated at first, but then she began to speak more freely. Our people once fought alongside other races during the Great War, Tashra said. It was a time of unity. We believed in peace, in building something greater than ourselves. But when the war ended, those we fought beside turned their backs on us. They moved on, seeking new alliances, new worlds to conquer. Did they leave you to fight alone? Ilara asked, her voice soft. Tashra nodded. Yes, we were left to defend ourselves against the invading forces. Our fleets, once mighty, were crushed. Our cities were burned to the ground. And when the fighting ended, we were nothing more than a shadow of what we once were. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with the weight of lost dreams. Ilara could feel the deep pain in Tashra's words, the years of suffering and abandonment. The canera had been betrayed by their own allies, left to crumble while the rest of the galaxy moved forward. That's why you're here, isn't it? Tashra asked, breaking the silence. You're here to help us. But why? Why would humans care about us? We're nothing to you. Ilara took a deep breath, searching for the right words. Because no one should be forgotten, she said finally. Humans, we don't abandon people. We may not have the greatest fleet or the most advanced technology, but we have something that the other races don't. We care. We fight for those who can't fight for themselves. Tashra's eyes softened, a flicker of hope appearing in the depths of her tired gaze. You care for us. Yes, Ilara said firmly. And we're not going anywhere. We'll help you rebuild, one step at a time. Together, we can make sure your people have a future, not just a past. As the humans continued their work, gathering data and assessing the city's ruins, Ilara and Tashra stayed behind, talking more. The canary leader began to open up about the traditions and knowledge of her people. She spoke of their once proud culture, their art, their music, and their incredible technological achievements. But most of all, she spoke of their will to survive, even when everything seemed lost. The canary were never just about technology, Tashra said. We are a people of resilience. Even in the darkest times, we never gave up. Our people may be few, but we still have the strength to rebuild. Ilara looked around the ruins of the city, her mind racing with possibilities. If the canary could be as resilient as Tashra said, then maybe there was hope for them after all. Maybe, with the right help, they could rise again. And this time, they wouldn't be alone. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the ruins in a soft, golden light, Ilara made a silent vow. She would help these people rebuild, not just their cities, but their hope. And she would make sure that the canary, the race that had been abandoned and forgotten, would no longer be alone in the universe. The following days on Canera were a whirlwind of activity. Captain Ilara and her crew worked tirelessly alongside the canary, helping to restore the remnants of their once great civilization. The humans had brought with them much-needed supplies, food, medical equipment, and technology. But more importantly, they'd brought something even more valuable: knowledge and hope. Ilara stood in the center of the camp, surveying the efforts around her. The human engineers had started to repair some of the more vital systems, like water purification and basic energy generators. Dr. Kayla and her team worked with the canary scientists, examining old blueprints and data from the past, looking for ways to restore their advanced technologies. But as the days passed, Ilara began to notice something about the canary people themselves. Though they had been abandoned by the galaxy, there was a quiet strength in their eyes, a resilience that went unnoticed by those who had long ignored them. The canary were survivors, and despite their fall, they still carried within them the spirit of their once proud civilization. One afternoon, Ilara sat down with Tashra by the remains of a large broken statue. It had once stood as a symbol of the canary's unity and strength, but now it was crumbled and weathered. Still, even in its broken form, it held a certain grace. Tashra stared at it for a long time, her face unreadable. Do you remember what it symbolized? Ilara asked, her voice soft. Tashra nodded slowly. This statue was the representation of the Canary Alliance, the unity of all the races that once stood by our side. When it was erected, we believed that no matter the challenges, we would face them together. But you were left alone, Ilara said quietly. Tashra sighed, her silver hair fluttering in the wind. Yes, the others left us to fight, but we never gave up. We've been through so much, and yet, here we are, still alive, still standing, despite everything. Ilara was struck by the quiet strength in Tashra's words. The canary had been abandoned, but their spirit had not been broken. They had endured unimaginable hardships, and still they fought on. The resilience of their people was something that the galaxy had failed to see. You're right, Ilara said, feeling a new sense of admiration for the canary. You've made it through the darkest times. That's a strength not everyone has. Tashra smiled, though it was a faint smile. "It's the strength of our people. We are not so easily forgotten." As the days went on, Ilara saw this strength more and more. The canary worked alongside the humans with a sense of purpose that went beyond mere survival. They weren't just rebuilding their cities, they were rebuilding their identity. Their culture, their history, and their traditions were still alive in the hearts of the people, despite the ruin around them. Ilara found herself growing more invested in their future. It wasn't just about helping them survive. It was about helping them thrive again. She spent hours with Tashra, learning about the canary's way of life, about their art, their philosophy, and their deep connection to the stars. She realized that the canary weren't just a forgotten people. They were a people with a rich, beautiful culture that deserved to be preserved. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Tashra led Ilara to a small gathering of canary. They were sitting around a fire, and Ilara could hear the soft hum of their voices, singing a song in a language she didn't understand. It was a song of their ancestors, passed down through generations. Tashra explained that it was a song of resilience, of hope in the face of despair. "We sing this song whenever we face the darkness," Tashra said, her voice quiet but full of emotion. "It reminds us that no matter how hard life gets, we are never truly alone. The stars are always watching over us." Ilara listened, feeling the deep connection to the canary in that moment. Their spirit, their unwavering hope, was something that transcended the boundaries of species and planets. It was a universal truth. No matter how dark the night, there was always the possibility of a new dawn. As the song ended, Ilara stood and turned to Tashra. "You're right," she said softly. "You are never alone, and we will make sure of that." Tashra nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I believe you, Ilara. I believe that this time we won't be forgotten." Ilara felt a deep sense of responsibility settle in her chest. The canary had been abandoned by the galaxy, but they were not beyond saving. They were not a lost cause. They were strong, resilient, and full of potential, and with the help of the humans, they would rise again. That night, as Ilara lay in her tent, staring up at the stars, she made a silent vow to herself. She would not let the canary fade away into the past. She would help them build a future, one where they were no longer forgotten, one where their strength would shine brightly for all to see. Captain Ilara stood on the edge of the Canary City, overlooking the vast expanse of broken buildings and fields that once held life. Despite the overwhelming devastation, there was a sense of something new in the air. It was faint, but it was there, a whisper of possibility, a sign that the canary might just be able to rebuild after all. But rebuilding would not be easy. It would take time, resources, and most of all, the unwavering determination of both the humans and the canary. As the days passed, the humans and canary continued their joint efforts. The engineers worked alongside canary craftsmen to restore the basics: water systems, energy grids, and shelters. But beyond that, Ilara knew that they needed something more. The canary needed a symbol of hope, a sign that their people could once again stand tall in the galaxy. They needed a reason to believe in the future. Tashra had been spending more time with her people, offering guidance and reassurance. Ilara admired the way the canary leader carried herself, despite the weight of the past. It wasn't easy, leading a people who had been abandoned for so long, but Tashra's resolve was unshakable. She still believed in the canary. She still believed that they could rise again. One afternoon, Tashra approached Ilara with a request. "There's a place I want to show you," she said. Her voice was filled with a quiet urgency. "It's not far from here, but it's important." Ilara agreed, and the two of them set out on foot. The journey was short, but the landscape was wild, untamed. As they walked, Tashra spoke softly about the canary's past, their rise to power, their golden age, and the alliance they had once forged with other civilizations. It was a story that had been told many times, but it never lost its weight. The canary had once been the shining star of the galaxy, and now they were reduced to survivors on a shattered world. We used to send our fleets out to explore new planets, to make new allies, to expand our knowledge, Tasher said, her eyes distant as she looked toward the horizon. But when the war came, we didn't just lose our fleets, we lost our connection to the stars. Ilara stayed silent, her mind processing the weight of Tasher's words. The canary had not just been defeated, they had been isolated. They had lost their place in the universe. When they finally reached their destination, Ilara was taken aback by what she saw. It was a vast crater, stretching across the land like a wound in the earth. At the bottom of the crater was a single towering tree, a species native to the canary homeworld, known for its resilience and longevity. The tree had survived the devastation, its roots digging deep into the ground, reaching for something deeper than the destruction that surrounded it. "This tree is a symbol of what we've lost," Tasher said quietly. "But it's also a symbol of what we still have, the strength to endure, no matter how deep the wound." Ilara looked at the tree, the sight of it both heartbreaking and inspiring. Despite everything the canary had endured, there was still life here, still something worth fighting for. She turned to Tasher, who was watching her with quiet hope in her eyes. "What do you want to do?" Ilara asked, her voice steady. "We will plant new trees," Tasher said, her eyes glowing with determination. "We will restore what we've lost, piece by piece, but we need the help of the humans to do it." Ilara nodded. She understood now. The canary didn't just need help rebuilding their cities or restoring their technology. They needed something deeper, a reason to believe that they could start anew. The tree was a symbol of resilience, and by planting new ones, they could show their people that even after everything had been lost, they could begin again. "We'll help," Ilara said firmly. "We'll help you rebuild, not just your cities, but your future." The next day, the humans and canary gathered together in the crater. The canary had brought seeds from other parts of their homeworld, seeds of trees that had stood for generations, trees that could withstand even the harshest conditions. The humans brought tools and technology to help with the planting, to ensure that the trees would have the best chance of survival. As they worked, Ilara watched the canary, their faces filled with hope. They were no longer just surviving. They were beginning to rebuild, to plant the seeds of a new future. The trees were more than just plants. They were symbols of rebirth. They were a promise that the canary would rise again. Tasher stood beside Ilara, watching as the last of the trees was planted. "Do you see it?" she asked softly. "The future growing before our eyes." Ilara nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. "I see it, and it's bright." As the sun set behind them, the first rays of light illuminated the trees. They stood tall, their branches stretching toward the sky, as if reaching for something greater. The canary had endured, and now, with the help of the humans, they were ready to thrive once again. And as the stars began to twinkle in the sky above, Ilara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The canary had not been abandoned any longer. They had found new allies, new hope, and most importantly, a future. And she would make sure they would never be forgotten again. Days turned into weeks, and the once barren land of Canera began to show signs of life again. The trees that had been planted stood tall, their roots slowly taking hold in the soil. The humans and canary worked side by side, their efforts bringing about small but noticeable changes. The sounds of construction filled the air as new buildings rose from the ground, powered by the energy sources the humans had helped restore. The canary, though weary from years of hardship, began to smile again. They saw the fruits of their labor, and with each passing day, their hope grew. But even as they made progress, there was a lingering fear, a fear that despite all they had accomplished, they were still alone. The galaxy had turned its back on them once before, and there was no guarantee that the humans would stay. Some of the canary, especially the older generation, were hesitant to fully trust the humans. They had seen countless promises broken in the past. Ilara could sense this unease, and it troubled her. She had come to care for the canary, and she knew that for them to truly rebuild, they needed to feel like they had allies. Real allies, not just temporary ones. She had spoken with Tashra about this, and together, they had come up with a plan. "It's time," Tashra said one evening as the two of them walked through the camp. "We need to reach out to the galaxy. We need to show them that the canary are still here, and that we're ready to stand with them once again." Ilara nodded. "But we can't just send a message. We need something bigger, something that shows the canary are not just survivors, but a force to be reckoned with." Tashra's eyes gleamed with determination. "We have the strength. We have the history. What we need is unity. We need to show the galaxy that the canary are ready to be a part of something greater than themselves." And so, Ilara and Tashra began to put their plan into action. They began organizing the canary into a new alliance, a group of civilizations and species that would stand together, not just for survival, but for strength and prosperity. The humans, of course, would be a part of this alliance, but Ilara knew that the canary needed to lead. It was their homeworld, their legacy, and their determination that would inspire others to join. The first step was to send a message, an invitation to the galaxy. It was a bold move, one that carried risks, but Ilara believed in it. The canary needed to show their face, to step out of the shadows and reclaim their place in the galaxy. The message was simple. The canary were no longer a forgotten people. They were alive, and they were ready to join forces with others who shared their vision. As the message was sent out, the humans and canary worked even harder. They built a communication relay that could reach far across the stars, hoping that one day it would find its way to those who had long ignored the canary. They worked to ensure that the message wasn't just a call for help, but a declaration of strength. The canary were not begging for allies. They were offering a hand, a partnership, and an opportunity for those willing to join them in a new future. Ilara knew that there would be skepticism. The canary had been abandoned once before, and many would wonder why they should trust them now. But the human captain was certain that the strength of the canary, combined with the support of the humans, could change the tide. The galaxy needed to see that the canary weren't a lost cause. They were a force that could help shape the future. Weeks passed before the first response came. It was from a small planet in the outer rim of the galaxy, a place that had once been under the canary's influence. The message was simple, but its meaning was clear. The canary had allies, and they were willing to work with them again. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Tashra stood beside Ilara as they watched the message. There was a sense of quiet joy in her eyes, but it was tempered by the understanding that this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but it was a road that the canary would walk with their heads held high. "We've taken the first step," Tashra said, her voice filled with pride. "Now we must continue moving forward. The galaxy is vast, and there are many who will doubt us. But we are no longer a forgotten people. We are the canary, and we will make our mark on the galaxy once again." Ilara placed a hand on Tashra's shoulder. "And we'll be with you every step of the way. You're not alone anymore." The two of them stood there for a moment, watching the stars above, knowing that the future was uncertain, but filled with potential. The canary had been forgotten, but they would not be erased. They had found strength in each other, and together they would build a future that no one could ignore. And so, with the first message sent, the canary began their journey back into the galaxy. It was a journey that would take time, patience, and determination, but it was a journey they would not take alone. The humans were with them, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The canary were no longer forgotten. They were reborn. The response from the small planet in the outer rim sent ripples of excitement through the canary camp. It was just the beginning, but it was more than enough to fuel their hope. The galaxy had noticed them, and that was a big step. Ilara stood with Tashra in the command center, looking over the messages they had received. The small planet's offer of alliance was just the first, But more messages were trickling in from others. Some were cautious, others curious, and a few even eager to reconnect with the canary. It was clear that the galaxy was starting to pay attention. Tashra smiled, though it was a faint one. This is just the beginning. There's so much more to do. We need to show them that we're not just a people in need of help, but a people ready to offer something in return. Ilara nodded. And we will. The humans have shown us that alliances aren't just about survival. They're about strength, respect, and what we can accomplish together. The canary had been forgotten for so long. Now they were not only alive, but thriving. With the help of the humans, they had rebuilt their cities, restored their land, and started to regain a sense of purpose. But there was still much to be done. The message they had sent was just the first part of a larger plan. They needed to prove that they could be a force to be reckoned with. Ilara's thoughts were interrupted by a loud noise coming from the communication room. A new message had arrived, this one from a much larger and more influential planet, one that had once been part of the Canary Empire. This planet, known as Olaris, had been abandoned by the Canary long before the war had broken out. It had once been a vital part of the Canary's political and military presence in the galaxy, but after the fall of their empire, it had fallen into isolation. The message on the screen was short, but its meaning was clear. Olaris was offering its assistance, not only to the Canary, but also to the human allies they had made. This was a significant turning point. Olaris was one of the most powerful planets in the galaxy, and its decision to join forces with the Canary meant that they were no longer alone. They were becoming part of something much bigger. Ilara and Tashra exchanged looks of disbelief. This was a breakthrough, one that would change everything. It wasn't just a plea for help anymore. It was a call for unity, a recognition that the Canary had something to offer the galaxy once again. "We've done it," Ilara said softly. "This is the first step toward what we've always wanted. The galaxy is starting to see the value in what we offer." Tashra's eyes shone with determination. It's more than that. Olaris wasn't just some distant ally. They were once at the heart of our empire. If they've come back to us, then there's a chance that others will follow. The response from Olaris was more than just a political statement. It was a promise. Olaris was offering to send ships, resources, and expertise to help the Canary build a new future. They understood the challenges ahead. They knew that rebuilding would take time, but they were willing to support the Canary and the humans in their mission. Word of Olaris' decision spread quickly throughout the Canary camps, and it sparked a new wave of optimism. The Canary were no longer the abandoned race they had once been. They were part of a larger network, a growing alliance of species and civilizations. Together, they could rebuild what had been lost and create something new, a future that was brighter, stronger, and more united. With this new alliance forming, Ilara knew it was time to take the next step. She called for a gathering of all the Canary leaders and the human allies to discuss their plans. The time for hesitation was over. They had allies now, and it was time to work together to make the galaxy a better place for everyone. As the leaders gathered in the central hall, Ilara addressed them. "This is our chance. The Canary have been given a second chance, and we will not squander it. With the help of our allies, both old and new, we will show the galaxy that we are not to be underestimated. Together, we can create a future where no one is forgotten, where no one is left behind. We have the strength to build something greater than we ever imagined." The room filled with applause, the leaders and their allies recognizing the weight of Ilara's words. The Canary were no longer an isolated, forgotten race. They were part of a new alliance, a coalition of civilizations that would work together to protect and strengthen one another. And the humans, who had always stood by their side, would help lead the way. As the meeting broke up, Ilara felt a deep sense of pride. The Canary had taken the first step toward their future, and they were no longer alone. The rising tide of hope that had started with a single message had now grown into a full-fledged movement, one that would change the course of the galaxy. The road ahead would not be easy, But Ilara was ready for whatever challenges lay in their path. With the strength of the canary, the wisdom of the humans, and the support of their growing allies, they would build a future where no civilization would ever be forgotten again. The day had finally come. The galaxy, once indifferent, was now witnessing the rise of something new. Ilara stood at the edge of the Canary City, looking out at the horizon as the sun set behind the tall structures that once lay in ruins. With the help of their human allies and their new friends from Solace, the Canary had rebuilt more than just their cities. They had rebuilt their hope, their pride, and their place in the galaxy. It wasn't just the Canary who had changed. The humans, too, had found their place within this new alliance. Their courage, compassion, and determination had been the spark that ignited the Canary's will to fight for their future. Without them, the Canary would have remained lost, their cries unheard. But now, as they looked toward the future, the Canary and humans were united in a cause greater than themselves. Ilara's mind wandered back to the first time she had met the humans. She had been a leader, but still unsure of the path ahead. The humans had shown her the strength of compassion, the power of teamwork, and how together they could overcome anything. That first act of kindness from Captain Lawson had led to this moment. It had shown the Canary that they weren't the forgotten race, but a people worth saving. Tashra walked up beside her, a soft smile on her face. "It's happening, Ilara. The galaxy is starting to listen. We're no longer alone." Ilara turned to look at her, the weight of everything they had gone through in the past months still heavy on her shoulders. "I never thought it would come to this. We've had to fight for everything. But now, I think we've found our place. Not just as survivors, but as a civilization with something to offer." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the city. The lights began to flicker on, one by one, signaling the start of a new era. The Canary weren't rebuilding just for themselves. They were rebuilding for everyone who had ever been forgotten, for every civilization that had been left behind by the rest of the galaxy. And in this new galaxy, no one would be abandoned again. "Do you think the others will follow?" Tashra asked, breaking Ilara's thoughts. "They already have," Ilara replied. "The word is spreading. The Canary are not just survivors. We are allies. We are builders, and the humans have helped us realize that we're not just a small group trying to stay alive, but a people who can inspire others. We can lead the way." As they spoke, a fleet of ships appeared on the horizon, their engines glowing as they approached. It was the first wave of ships from Solace, bringing with them supplies, soldiers, and engineers. Solace was not only showing support, they were actively helping to restore the Canary to their former glory. This wasn't just a political alliance anymore. It was a partnership, one that promised prosperity, safety, and peace for all. The Canary leaders and their human allies gathered in the central hall, waiting for the arrival of the Solace delegation. The moment was significant. This would be the official start of the new alliance. For the first time in years, there was no fear in the air, no doubt or hesitation. They had proven that despite everything the galaxy had thrown at them, the Canary were still standing, stronger than ever. Ilara stood at the front of the room as the Solace representatives entered, their faces full of respect and determination. The room fell silent as the leader of Solace, a tall, dignified being named Orva, stepped forward. "We come not just as allies, but as friends," Orva said, his voice clear and powerful. "We offer our resources, our knowledge, and our strength. Together, we will shape a future where none are left behind." The words resonated through the room, filling everyone with a sense of pride and purpose. The Canary were no longer an afterthought in the galaxy. They were a beacon of hope, a shining example of what could be accomplished when civilizations came together, working for the greater good. Ilara stepped forward, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Today, we begin the next chapter, a chapter where no race, no people is forgotten. We will honor the legacy of those who helped us rise, and we will make sure that no one is left in the dark again." We are Canari, and we are proud to stand with you." The room erupted in applause, the sound of unity echoing through the hall. The Canari had found their place in the galaxy, and they were no longer invisible. They had allies, they had strength, and most importantly, they had each other. As the celebration continued, Ilara stood with Tashra, gazing out at the bright lights of the city. It had been a long road, filled with hardship and loss, but they had made it. And in that moment, Ilara knew that they were no longer just survivors. They were a people destined to thrive, to lead, and to change the galaxy for the better. The future was bright, and the Canari were ready to face it. Together with their human allies and the rest of their newfound friends, they would build a galaxy where no one was ever forgotten again.